Today, Afghanistan are among cricket's established order. When your team plays Afghanistan, they take it seriously. They're a country overflowing with incredibly talented players. Rashid Khan, of course, springs to mind, and he's one of my favorite players going around the game today. Mujibur Rahman is another player that I really like, and I feel he is incredibly underrated. Muhammad Nabi is a player that's been around for quite a while, and he's a very respected figure within the game, and he's still kicking it at the age of 38. Not as good as he used to be, but still pretty solid. Afghanistan are even at the point where players as talented as Qais Ahmed can't get proper runs in the squad because there's just too much competition. As of today, Afghanistan have won 78 matches against full members, including 4 across the last 2 Asia Cups, and many close calls at both World Cups and Asia Cups in recent years. There is no doubt anymore about their prowess as an international side. That is, as a men's international side. There is a very deep darkness in Afghanistan on the women's side of things, both inside and especially outside of cricket. It's a darkness that extends far beyond the scope of this video. I will be waxing incredibly lyrical about the incredible story that is the Afghanistan men's cricket team, and I think it is a story worth telling and worth listening to because it's a wonderful story. But none of us should ever forget the challenges and hardships, these unimaginable challenges and hardships faced by the women of Afghanistan on a daily basis. Afghanistan's men's team ascended the ranks of world cricket with incredible speed. No other nation ever has done what they did, and very few have come anywhere close. From the 5th division of world cricket, the bottom division of world cricket, to winning the T20 World Cup qualifier in the span of just 3 years, that is an unheard of rise. However, I would argue that this was not Afghanistan's greatest achievement. No, I think that comes next. You see, many associate teams get stuck in that level right below or on par with the lowest ranked full members. They go about even with the likes of Zimbabwe, pre-2015 Bangladesh, post-2018 West Indies, Ireland. They can occasionally pull off upsets against one of the stronger sides, but their consistency in these sorts of fixtures, both against these lower ranked full members, but also against the other top associate teams, it's not quite there. They don't position themselves as a team that is definitively better than the ones they're competing against, and they struggle to break into, that sort of next tier of international cricket. And that is where Afghanistan's story shines the brightest for me. It is their efforts on the path to full membership and after it. After winning the T20 World Cup qualifier in 2010, Afghanistan entered this sort of limbo area. This is a place many other associate teams have been before. Scotland, Ireland, the Netherlands, Kenya, even Canada. They're teams that are the best among equals at the top of the associate ladder and sometimes start to break into challenging that full member order, but they don't quite fully break through. And that is where Afghanistan find themselves in this period. But today, we've seen that Afghanistan have blown past that barrier. They have completely blown past Zimbabwe and Ireland. You could argue they've even blown past the West Indies. They have a pretty even record against Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. No other team since Bangladesh has come anywhere close to this, not even Ireland. And it took Bangladesh almost 2 decades from getting full membership to reach that level. Afghanistan did it arguably before they reached full membership. Okay, I get that I'm talking in sort of abstract terms here, so let's wrap this up. Afghanistan today have reached a level that only one other team in the last 25 years has reached. They came from outside of cricket's establishment, blew past all of their competitors, and they even started to go past the lowest rungs of cricket's inner establishment. They're now very safely secure in that lower middle of the pack inside this sort of pyramid of cricket teams. And on both the performance front and also the diplomatic front, I think there is one clear place of origin for this. There's one tournament in particular which I think really heralds the beginning to Afghanistan's path to this level, and that tournament is the 2014 Asia Cup. Now, the 2014 Asia Cup is a tournament that I have very fond memories of. I remember Sri Lanka and Pakistan going toe-to-toe twice.
India, the captain is good. Well played by Angelo Matthews. He's the man they needed at the end. A lot of others set it up, but he's taken his side, Sri Lankans. Brilliant work. It's been a good team performance.
There was one of the all-time great India-Pakistan matches. And Bangladesh was seemingly obsessed with losing every possible close game that they could.
It's gone to shot cover. Mushfiqur Rahim puts it down. Oh, Afridi, they dropped you in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There'd be someone coming to rescue you.
And also at that tournament was Afghanistan. Afghanistan were only the 7th team ever to compete at an Asia Cup, after Hong Kong and the UAE had competed in 2004 and 2008. And unlike Hong Kong and the UAE, Afghanistan would actually win a game. But this tournament seems to have been largely forgotten. It is somehow not listed in this short directory of Asia Cup tournaments on the Asia Cup Wikipedia page. And it is entirely absent from the history section of Afghanistan's Wikipedia page. So let's rectify that a little. This is a tournament I think is very important, both for the story I'm talking about Afghanistan, but also just, I love this tournament. It was a ton of fun. So let's talk about it a bit. As we've seen with the last few Asia Cups really, Asia Cup hosting is never a simple matter, and this tournament was no different. The 2012 edition had been in Bangladesh, so you would expect the tournament to not go back to Bangladesh again, and that is what was supposed to happen. The 2014 Asia Cup was originally given to India, but in June of 2013, India pulls out of hosting it, citing scheduling concerns. They have a very busy start to the year in 2014 and feel like they cannot host the Asia Cup with all these other fixtures going around. Bangladesh steps up to host. They even say they'll cancel or move around their other tours around the same time in order to accommodate hosting the tournament, and they get it. The winter of 2013-14 is a very difficult time for Bangladesh as a country. There was a wave of political violence going on. The West Indies U19 team are in Bangladesh for a 7-match series that winter in December to January. On the day of their second match, there's a bomb blast on their way to the game, and they're sent back to the hotel, and they pull out of the rest of the tour because of that scare. There's a lot of back and forth between Bangladesh and the other members of the ACC after this. There's a lot of negotiations going on. And after giving several extra security measures, a bunch of extra security guarantees, Bangladesh are affirmed the Asia Cup later that January. It's only on January 4th of 2014, less than 2 months before the Asia Cup is supposed to begin, that they are certain about who is going to host the tournament. That meeting on January 4th, where Bangladesh are affirmed as hosts, also confirmed that Afghanistan would participate at the 2014 Asia Cup. Now this was a major change, and also a bit out of left field. Look at it this way. The tournament is supposed to begin on February 25th. It was planned as a 4-team event with no pathway for a 5th team until January 4th. Again, less than 2 months until this tournament is supposed to begin. Adding a 5th team would mean 4 extra games, and some clunky scheduling because now you have an odd amount of teams. But despite that, they worked it out to get Afghanistan here. The short turnaround also meant that there was no formal qualification process for this tournament, and so Afghanistan got in pretty much off the back of their representatives' oration skills. Afghanistan did have decent merit to participate at this event as the best associate team in Asia, but their credentials weren't anything definitive. They were going to play in the World T20 after the Asia Cup, but so were Nepal, Hong Kong, and the UAE. At this point, Afghanistan were the only Asian associate that had qualified for the 2015 World Cup, and they probably pressed a claim that rubbing shoulders with the big boys would help them for that tournament. It would be a better look for Asia if the Asian associate did pretty well. That is true, but there were also 3 Asian teams competing in the World Cup qualifier. A World Cup qualifier that was going to begin a week after this meeting. By the end of January, before the Asia Cup would happen, the UAE would have wrapped up their qualification for the finals in Australia and New Zealand. There is also a precedent of the ACC scheduling 50-over tournaments for the Asian associates to play each other. This is a more formalized and more publicized process today. We have the ACC Premier Cup. This serves as a qualifier for the 50-over Asia Cup. There is indeed an ACC Premier League as it was known back then in 2014 that Afghanistan win. The problem is this was in May. This happens well after the Asia Cup, so this could not act as a qualifier for the Asia Cup. The previous edition, the 2012 ACC Trophy now as it was called then because they keep changing the name, at that tournament, two teams finish above Afghanistan. The UAE and Nepal share the trophy after the final is washed out, but Afghanistan are knocked out in the semi-final. So they are very clearly not petitioning for the 2012 ACC Trophy to act as a qualifier for the Asia Cup in 2014. Now, I'm not trying to downplay what Afghanistan have been up to over the past 5 years at this point. They had some absolutely stunning runs. Of course, there's that World T20 qualifier win that I mentioned earlier, and in that same year, they win the Intercontinental Cup. And both of these things, they are the first time Afghanistan plays in the Intercontinental Cup and a World T20 qualifier, and they win both on their first attempt. They beat all these established teams in the associate world at their first attempt. This is just an incredible run they go on, an incredible story of this team coming from basically nowhere to go to pretty much the top of the associate game. In 2014, I would argue that they were the best associate side out there, even more than Ireland, and they certainly were the best associate team in Asia. But there wasn't that much concrete basis for them to play this event. Most criteria that applied to them also applied to a few other teams. The only two criteria which applied to only Afghanistan, the fact that they were an Asian associate with ODI status and an Asian associate that had qualified for the World Cup in 2015, those criteria would not apply solely to them by the end of the month, let alone the beginning of the Asia Cup. So the UAE definitely have some reason to feel aggrieved. If the UAE, or even Nepal or Hong Kong, who were also at the World Cup qualifier, had reps in the room, they could have probably argued that we can just wait for the World Cup qualifier to end, we see who gets ODI status, who qualifies for the World Cup, and once that is all sorted, we can then play a quick series, a quick quadrangular qualifier with Afghanistan. This should take less than a week, we can get that all done before the Asia Cup begins, and then whatever team wins that can play the Asia Cup as the fifth team. It wouldn't have been that difficult to just make the fixtures with an unknown fifth team sitting around until 2 weeks before the event, because that tends to happen actually quite often. That happened at the Asia Cup in 2022, indeed. But that is not what happened. Afghanistan probably pushed that they were the only team that ticked all of these required boxes at the time, probably failed to mention that these might not be true by the time the Asia Cup happened, but Afghanistan's argument was convincing enough. And in fairness, the only people they had to convince were the 4 full members who probably, definitely, had all the power here. And they probably did not really care about having the most robust selection process. Whether or not their appearance being decided in the boardrooms rather than completely on the field was entirely fair, the UAE would benefit from it regardless. This ensured that future Asia Cups would indeed have formal qualifying processes again as they had in 2004 and 2008, and the first team to benefit from this would be the UAE, and funny enough it happens at Afghanistan's expense, but that's a story for another time. So that is how our story brings us to a position where Afghanistan is present at an Asia Cup and the Asia Cup is coming to Fatullah in Bangladesh. So what about Bangladesh themselves? Bangladesh reached the final of the previous Asia Cup in 2012, and they only lose by 2 runs after a heroic performance from Aizaz Chima in the final. And honestly, this kinda comes from nowhere. Since getting full membership, Bangladesh had been a punching bag. Their record immediately following full membership, it is truly, truly awful. When they get full membership in 2000, across the rest of 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003, Bangladesh failed to win a single game against anybody, and they even played Canada in 2003. They start to win a little bit more after that, and there is never another year as bad as 2003, where they lose 29 games, 0 wins, and even 0 draws, but there is rarely any consistency. Most wins they have are sterling efforts by a single player or maybe 2 players, and they're not followed up on. The closest Bangladesh gets to being a competent side is in the middle of 2010, where they have a competitive series against England,
Well, he's gone. His edge has been taken. Momentous occasion here. Bangladesh have beaten England for the first time in 21 outings.
Followed by series wins over New Zealand and Zimbabwe back-to-back. But they follow that up with not much. They're humiliated at their home World Cup by South Africa and, most egregiously, the West Indies. But sort of to sum up how Bangladesh was in this period, they also beat England in the middle. And in the lead up to the 2012 Asia Cup, Bangladesh win a few games, but then they lose 7 on the trot on the eve of the tournament. But then they turn it up for the Asia Cup. They run Pakistan close and then they beat India.
They've done it! Bangladesh have done it! Terrific shot! My word, what an effort this has been! It's gone all the way to the boundary and look at the jubilation. Well done, Bangladesh. Unbelievable scenes here. Bangladesh have chased a mammoth total set by India. 290 to win, the finish on in quick style, winning by 5 wickets. 293 for 5, in the middle, Mushfiqur Rahim. What a knock this has been, yes.
And then they beat Sri Lanka.
The full toss. Let's go through. That's the winning moment for Bangladesh. They're through to the final. And look at the delight and joy from everybody. They played exceptional cricket in this tournament and they fully deserve a place in the final.
Yes, they have played really, really well. They ran Pakistan very close in the inaugural match of the tournament and they surpassed India's total of 289. And here.
Which brings them to a final. At home, against Pakistan, they lose a heartbreaker.
Into the block hole, great bowling. Yes! Pakistan winning the Asia Cup in 2012 and Bangladesh have won the hearts of everybody who watched this entire tournament. And what a match it's turned out to be.
They can still keep their heads very high indeed. Such a tight game this turned out to be. Could not go on to win the game. There will be heartbroken people.
But despite leaving empty-handed, there's a newfound optimism around the team again. They performed very respectably in that 2012 to 2014 period between these two Asia Cups. It's nothing groundbreaking. They don't have any huge prestige wins like they did even in 2010, where they win a game against England for the first time and then they beat New Zealand in a series for the first time. But they perform very respectably on the whole. Even though they're still losing more than they win, they're holding their own. They opened the 2014 Asia Cup with a match against India, and they do very well with the bat. They run India very close with the ball while defending, but India finally run away with it in the last few overs thanks to a Kohli century and some good batting from the lower order. Still, it was a solid showing, and they were expected to be too much for Afghanistan. And that is how we get to March 1st, 2014. Both teams are in their second game. Afghanistan had played their opening game 2 days earlier against Pakistan, and they lose quite comprehensively. Now going into this game against Bangladesh, this is Afghanistan's 28th ODI, their 4th against a full member, having played 2 against Pakistan and 1 against Australia. Bangladesh were the hosts and looked a much more capable side. And yet, things don't always go to plan.